All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to DAO Talk. This is an introduction into the Tally protocol. This is episode 1. We'll have episodes coming out over the next 4 weeks, diving deeper into everything. But this week we're joined by Dennison Bertram. Dennison, for those who don't know you, I think if you've listened to this, you know who Dennison is, but give a quick overview on who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Tommy. My name is Dennison Bertram. I am the co-founder and CEO here at Tally. I've been in the DAO and governance space for a very long time, building Tally, but doing other things as well. I'm really excited to be here to talk about the Tally protocol, which is what we really think is the sort of end state for DAOs and solving many of the problems that they have faced over the past few years.
So yeah, dive a little bit deeper into what is the Tally protocol and why is it happening now and how are we thinking about it when you're building it?
Sure. I think probably it's worthwhile taking a little step back and sort of like talk about the state of DAOs today. There's a little bit of a weird situation that DAOs face, right? You have token holders who participate in DAOs, and these tokens are very interesting, right? They are governance tokens, right? So they don't have any value. They're just used for operating something, operating a protocol. And this is very important. But because we live in a permissionless ecosystem, people trade these tokens and they have prices, right? And there's this speculative price on DAO tokens. So you have a token that has this organizational utility. You can use it for voting, but it also has a financial utility, right? You could sell it, or you could use it as collateral on a loan, or you could put it into a restaking service and make some yield, right? So protocol tokens are really interesting. They have this tension, this duality on the nature and purpose of their use. And that actually is very important for kickstarting and creating these communities and creating DAOs and driving value to them and creating protocols that have value and do wonderful things. But long term, actually, this tension starts to destroy the DAO, right? So DAOs today are dealing with a few problems, which maybe is an understatement for DAOs if you are big in DAOs. But the primary problem is that they don't return value to token holders. What that means is that while you may hold this DAO token and you may participate in governance, you're not paid for participating in governance, right? And in fact, many of these communities sort of expect people to operate billion-dollar ecosystems for free or as a side project or as a hobby, right? And that drives this relationship to the speculative value of tokens, right? Where people also hold these DAO tokens thinking, well, maybe I'll just sell it after the airdrop, right? And, we won't get into that very much, which also has its own sort of, complications or things that are difficult about it. But essentially, you now have this community of people who receive no value for the work that they're doing. And primarily, this is legal. There's no way to return value to token holders, right? You cannot just give money to token holders, right? That's illegal. That's not allowed. Also, that would drive some really, really bad incentives in protocols, right? Like, not only is this not what you want legally, this is not what you want just by protocol design. That's terrible. Terrible. So what does that leave us with? Well, today we see that DAOs are actually breaking because they don't return value to token holders, right? We see that these communities that have this sort of like fan base of people working for free have a problem with apathy, have a problem with participation. We see that in DAOs where people just aren't showing up to vote, they're just not showing up to participate. And a lot of people tend to say, oh, DAOs don't work because people are apathetic, they're not participating. And yeah, of course, why would they, right? Like reading through the forums night and day, going on the Discord night and day, showing up and thoughtfully evaluating proposals night and day, this is labor. Right? This is hard work. And in the traditional world, right, there's entire corporations just around doing these kind of analysis, doing these kind of, participation, sort of understanding how these things work, tweaking all these things, right? And there's a little bit of an unreasonable disconnect here to expect that we could have regular people operate sometimes extremely complicated systems. Right? Like it's one thing to say, hey, folks, should we throw a party at the next conference? Let's vote on it. It's another thing to say, hey, let's look deeply into the protocol dynamics of cross-chain liquidity pools and determine what should be the proper, fee as a result of X, Y, and Z, right? These are very different things. These are things that need experts. These are things that need qualified individuals. And you don't get that talent without paying them, right? So there's something interesting that is going on here in the United States right now. A16Z is worked with the legislature in Wyoming to pass a new bill called the DAO, which basically now allows DAOs to register and allows them to return value to token holders in exchange for doing governance, right? In exchange for work. You have to work. You don't just hold the token and get money. No, absolutely not, right? It creates a framework by which you can have essentially employees, people that work for the organization, kind of like contractors, right? And this is a very interesting point because this is sort of starting to define the way in which DAOs can probably return value to token holders, right? So this is one piece. This isn't universal. Not everyone will opt for a DAO, but it's very, very important to sort of speak to this sort of like timeline of how large organizations are starting to think about how do we return value to token holders and ensure that these governances maintain healthy ecosystems by ensuring that the people who are doing all this work have some sort of path to remuneration for the effort that they put in themselves. All right, so this is just one piece, right? Let's go back to this sort of like duality problem. Today, you have these DAO tokens, and you can vote with them or you could sell them. And, if you look at teams like Uniswap, something like 150, 160% of quorum is actually held on centralized exchanges and in DeFi. They're for sale. These are people who have said, all right, screw it. Not interested in voting, not interested in participating for free here, not interested in giving all my time and sweat and energy to something that gives me nothing back. I am going to extract what value is possible to extract by selling the token. Right? And this is bad, right? Because 158% of quorum is available for sale. So someone could go buy quorum in Uniswap and pass virtually anything they wanted, right? And participation in Uniswap today is around 40, 45, 50 million votes per proposal, and something like 70, 78, something like that, million tokens are for sale, right? So you can see how you create this really perverse incentive where there's a lot of value to be captured by doing something nefarious in the Uniswap DAO. And to be clear, you don't have to destroy the DAO to make money, right? Like people are looking to, the incentive model here drives towards extraction, right? So, and you don't have to destroy Uniswap to extract from it, right? It would be simple enough to put up a proposal on, Christmas Eve that looks bad enough to spook people and scare people. Right? And you could simply take a short out on the Uni token on another exchange, and you could just profit from volatility, right? So there's a lot of opportunities here to do real damage, both reputationally, but actually damage to protocols through just simple means of just acquiring enough of this voting power, because the underlying token holders don't care enough to hold on to this power. They are looking to get something out of it, right? There's the incentives aligned towards extraction. Okay. So this tension really gets deep, because if you think about it, if you think, okay, what does it look like for success and failure for a DAO? Well, if the DAO price goes to zero, the token price goes to zero, then obviously the DAO is dead, right? Either nobody cares about the DAO, so nobody thinks that there's any reason to hold the token, right? And we should talk about this a little bit, this money, this price that goes on tokens, because anyone can make a market. This is a speculative premium, right? The price and value of DAO governance tokens is based upon some idea that in the future, maybe the DAO will return value to token holders. So the price that governance tokens go for on exchanges is really this mechanism of pulling forth some sort of value from the future to today, saying, hey, one day this token will return value to token holders, and this is the price that represents the sort of like chance of that happening. Right. And of course, as DAOs over time sort of convince the token holders that they'll never return value to them, the price goes to zero. Right. So, okay, the price goes to zero, DAOs fail, no one cares. Well, you would think that the opposite side of this would be the price going to infinity. And that would be awesome, right? Like you have a DAO token, the price has gone to infinity. Ironically, though, this also leads to the failure of DAOs, right? And this is this is why this tension, this duality of the tokens is such a problem. Because when the price of a token goes to infinity, and by infinity I mean the maximum possible price that this DAO token could have, right? Once it goes to infinity, what is the logical thing for token holders to do? Well, the DAO doesn't return any value to them, right? But now the opportunity cost of holding this DAO token is at its maximum, right? You could vote or you could make money, but the making money option now is at its peak. And because we're at the maximum, we know that any moment after this time, you'll only lose money. So what that causes is, as the token of the DAO token goes to its maximum possible price, the maximum possible opportunity cost is put upon token holders. And now the only reasonable course of action is to exit the DAO, is to sell these tokens, right? This is a big problem. So now you have failure at the low end and you have failure at the high end. And the failure at the high end is very interesting because at the very minimum, everyone's tokens are on Coinbase. They're all just waiting for someone to buy them. Nobody's operating the DAO. Nobody's selling the DAO, right? And then, of course, you have a really negative feedback loop because, of course, everyone wants to be the first to get out at the best price. There's a rush for the exits. As the exits, token price drops, obviously, this sort of panic ensued. All the tokens are available on the market. Nobody operates the protocol. It looks like nothing's going on. It's a doomsday scenario. But there's actually another purchaser here who lies in the shadows at all ends of the spectrum. These are malicious actors. Because if you have a token that doesn't have any expectation to return value to token holders, who is a logical purchaser of that token? Right? And it's important to talk about, when we talk about token value and token price and tokens voting, this is actually the security of DAOs, right? We can talk about this as the security of DAOs, right? Uniswap has a quorum of 40 million, right? The security of Uniswap is at a minimum of 40 million multiplied by the cost of the DAO token. That's the economic security at a minimum, right? At a maximum, it's 1 billion uni tokens times the price of 1 billion uni tokens, right? That's the total financial value, right? Okay. So we have this dynamic where DAOs fail at the low end of token price. So you have this dynamic where DAOs fail at the high end of token price. And you have this dynamic where the only logical purchaser of these tokens and at either end are malicious entities. And for DAOs like ENS is an enormous ETH-denominated treasury. ENS is a very successful decentralized protocol, DAO, that makes revenue in ETH. Whenever people buy an ENS name, they pay in ETH. This ETH goes into the treasury. But what is the economic security of ENS? The economic security of ENS is based on the price of all the tokens required, all the votes required to pass quorum. And unfortunately, the price of reaching quorum and passing a proposal in ENS is lower than the value of its treasury. So you are in a situation where, for financially motivated actors, there is a guaranteed profit that exists in DAOs where the treasury value is greater than the economic security value, right? Today in ENS, it would be economically in your interest to buy up ENS tokens specifically to run the treasury. And we see this happening. This is what happened with Aragon. This is why Nouns forked, right? You had these groups called like free value raiders who look at DAOs, they figure out what's the book value of the token, what is the value of the treasury, they do the math, they figure, hey, if we buy up all these governance tokens, we can pass a proposal and run the treasury. And this has happened, right? And it continues to happen. In fact, there's an entire blog post out there showing people how to use DeFi tools to figure out where DAOs are vulnerable, to come up with the capital to run the treasuries, right? So this is a big problem, right? So back to this duality problem, right? Now we've sort of established that DAOs need these tokens to bootstrap themselves, right? And we won't get into that because that's kind of like a deep discussion. But we've talked about how DAOs fail at both ends of the spectrum, right? It's no price and high price. But now we can talk about the tension and why this tension is so dangerous. DAOs should be driving towards success, right? You want your DAO to be successful. You are driving towards success. And success generally is reflected in the market and price, right? Token holders think maybe one day in the future they're going to return value to the token. And oh, look, the protocol is getting really successful. So that value that's going to be returned is going to be greater and greater. Oh, the token should be worth more. The price of the token goes up. So the DAO is optimizing for success, for building a great protocol, doing a great job. They're optimizing for token price, right? They don't want to zero a token that is worthless, right? Malicious actors will buy them all up, or everyone will leave and no one will care, right? But what happens at the other end of success? We know if they ever get to the maximum of their success, they also destroy their organization. Right? So you have this tension where it's very useful in the beginning because you kind of have to like bootstrap your community with tokens, or you have to bootstrap your economics with tokens. You have to bootstrap your governance by distributing governance power through people, right? But now you are essentially stuck in a pattern of driving value to a token, which is probably not the right thing to do. But you're stuck in this thing where you're driving value, which destroys the DAO. Right? Because what the DAO is doing is like trying to do a great job. That great job raises the price of the token. As it raises the price of the token, the opportunity cost felt by the token holders goes up. And eventually this protocol is so successful that it fails because everyone wants to get out. Right? So that's kind of a crazy dynamic. And that is what's happening to mature DAOs today. Right? This is happening in many DAOs, not just ENS. Not just now. It's not just Aragon, right? Aragon's DAO is gone now, right? Mm-hmm. So, what is the Tally protocol? The Tally protocol solves this problem by splitting the duality of the token. We separate the governance utility from the financial utility via staking. And we eliminate the opportunity cost of token holders via liquid staking. So what is this? Staking is locking your token in the protocol and delegating. And for this, you can get something in return. Either it's a share of revenue from the organization, from the DAO, or it's inflationary rewards. And this is very useful, right? Because the way the DUNA law is written, it specifies how DAOs can return value to token holders. And one of them is specifically for you can pay token holders a reasonable amount for the act of governance, right? And Uniswap is the first DAO to sort of move on this. Unistaker is essentially the minimal viable implementation of the DUNA legislation, right? Which is lock your tokens into this contract, delegate to someone, which is pick someone to do governance. Ideally, it should be yourself, but you can pick someone else. Mm-hmm. And now you can receive a portion of the protocol revenue. So this is very important, right? This is staking. And this is not the best solution, but it's a step forward, right? Because what this now does is it says to users, it says to token holders, if you help make this thing a great thing, you will benefit from the greatness that we achieve, essentially, right? Do work, you can be paid for it. And the legislation is worded very specifically, a reasonable amount. The more work you do, the more you can be paid for it, right? Because there are some delegates, right? Maybe some people just show up and vote, but some people read through everything. They model out theoreticals. They go through and they do all this work. It creates a pathway for appropriately remunerating participants for their efforts, their own efforts. That's very critical. The work that they do themselves, right? That's how they're benefiting. Token holders aren't benefiting just for like hanging out and hoping someone else does the work. Absolutely not, right? You have to work yourself. Okay, great. So this solves one of the problems, or starts to solve one of the problems, but it's actually not the complete solution. And it's not a complete solution because it actually creates a greater opportunity cost for token holders, weirdly enough. Because now, token holders have to think, okay, how much will I be paid for my work versus what are the economic opportunities of this token elsewhere, right? And it's interesting because now that we know you can do work and the protocol will return value to token holders via their own efforts, we now know that this token is valuable. This DAO is valuable, right? So we're driving that question of, okay, value is going up. And as we saw before, that drives opportunity cost, right? Because now you could say, hey, I could take a loan out on this because it has value for anyone who wants to take it and go do the work. It's almost like an option to go do work, right? Like, it's weird, but it's almost like a citizenship pass to a country where, like, you can't go get a job in America unless you're an American. So you go get some American passport and now you can do work in America and get paid, right? And if you think about it, there's lots of people around the world who would love America token to come here and be able to work and get paid, right? It's the same for DAOs, right? So it's an option to be able to go work and get paid in the protocol. So, okay, the opportunity cost now is justified because you could go sell this token on an exchange, or maybe you can hold it and earn revenue from the protocol if you do work, right? And so now we have this situation where you have this opportunity to work and earn revenue, earn a portion of the revenue, and that's very good. That's very good. But it's driving opportunity cost. And there's an actual danger out here that people aren't so aware of. Today, the opportunity cost would be taking out a loan on your tokens or selling them on exchange. So you basically have to think, if I sell these tokens on exchange now, I get X amount of value, but if I wait and do work in the protocol, I get paid X amount of revenue over time, which is worth more. So that's an opportunity cost that individual users have to make themselves. It's put upon them and they sort of make that decision. But there's no feedback mechanism here for actually good governance, right? Like, you delegate you stake your tokens, they're locked in the protocol, you pick a delegate, and then you can sort of hands off a bit, right? And that's not great for the DAO, right? The DAO wants to be able to pay people more for doing more work. You want really incentivizing people to work hard and operate this protocol. And there's no mechanism here to hold your delegates accountable for doing a good job, right? Because extractive behaviors exist in all of these ecosystems, and we have to be wary of these extractive behaviors at all times, right? So what the Tally protocol is doing, as I mentioned before, is splitting governance from the financial utility. In the Tally protocol, you take your uni token or your any token, any DAO governance token, and you put it into the Tally protocol. Under the hood, we stake it for you, and we help you with the work that needs to be done to operate the protocol. We are sort of this efficiency layer on getting stuff done in the DAO. And we give you back a liquid version of your token, right? And this liquid version of the token earns the underlying revenue based on, we auto-compound your position in staking. The Tally protocol has a lot of mechanics around ensuring that delegates do a good job. We could talk about that a little bit later. But you get a liquid position. You get a token that now is exchangeable at any point in time, one-to-one, with the underlying token, plus the accrued yield. So now you have a token that represents the underlying token, plus the yield that it accrues. And you can go use it in DeFi. You can sell it on an exchange. And while you're waiting to sell it on the exchange, it's making money, right? While you're putting it into a lending protocol, it's making money. You could build really amazing new DeFi primitives on this, right? You could build a DeFi protocol that takes your token, and there actually have been things like this before, but for other things. You could take a loan out on your DAO token that pays itself out with its own yield, right? So you could do really cool things. But what's really interesting here now is that you can put it into restaking. And I think we need to take a moment to talk about restaking and what restaking means for DAOs. Specifically, the danger that it proposes to DAOs. And kind of, this danger it's kind of unexpected. It's kind of something you wouldn't have thought of. Basically what it is that restaking is the idea of reusing economic security to secure other, most likely off-chain services, right? And the current restaking services, Symbiotic, Eigenlayer, essentially they're taking ETH or staked ETH and saying to third parties, you can run a system and you can back it with the economic security of the staked ETH. I won't fully get into how restaking works, but it is fascinating and it is really cutting edge. It's really, really a fascinating take on how to scale Ethereum security. Great. Catch is that there's only so much ETH in the world, right? And at the end of the day, you can imagine restaking service A and restaking service B both having 50% of all available staked ETH in their restaking service. The core part of restaking is the idea that you have the most economic security. It is not enough to say, I have some economic security. You want the most economic security. Because you're always vaguely a little bit in danger if someone has more economic security than you, right? Because it's like ENS. Maybe there's some value that you hold that is protected by less economic security than the value of that. And so you're in danger. And restaking services kind of have to compete to the death forever to have the greatest amount of economic security. So what do they do when all of the available economic security from restaked ETH is already being utilized? Well, you have to ask yourself a pretty simple question. What is more valuable, the internet or all the things built on top of the internet? And if you think about it, it's pretty clear. All the things built on top of the internet are vastly more valuable than these fiber optic cables that are lying around on the bottom of the ocean and the switches and things like that, right? The internet enables all this value. All this value rides on top of the internet. The same way all these protocols ride on top of Ethereum. But in aggregate, they are more valuable than Ethereum itself. So the way that these restaking services continue to compete is to suck up protocol tokens. If one of these restaking services says, hey, I need more economic security than the other guy, the best thing to do is turn to Uniswap token holders and say, hey, Uniswap does $1 trillion of volume a year. There's some economic value to Uniswap. Let's take their economic security and add it to us. The idea being, sometimes people get caught up where they say, oh, well, Uniswap doesn't really have staking. Unistaker isn't really staking. There's no slashing. That's actually pretty irrelevant here. The idea, if you boil it down, is I have some uni that I pledge for doing good work. And if I do bad work, you can take it. And there's people, as long as Uniswap is something that's valuable and works, there's people who'll take your uni. Right? So there's people who take your uni as collateral for their economic security, and those are the restakers. So the problem starts to be, okay, now restakers will pay uni token holders for their uni token. But how much are they going to pay? Well, the problem is that they can always outbid Uniswap for its own economic security. Right? Uniswap needs token holders to have control of their tokens to vote and participate and, at the very minimum, to be available to vote no on a malicious proposal. Right? Uniswap needs people to hold onto their tokens to protect it in the case an attacker has bought up all the tokens out of Binance and is going to vote themselves something wild. Right? They need their community. They need their operators. But now the token holders are going to have to face the opportunity cost of Eigenlayer, Symbiotic, whoever else, paying the token holder for their token. And the option is going to be you can either lock your token into Unistaker or staking and earn a portion of the protocol revenue, or you can lock your token in restaking. The problem is that the restakers pay the token holder as a percentage of the total economic value of the DAO, plus the revenue that the tokens accrue, while the DAO can only pay token holders as a percent of the revenue. So restaking services can always outbid protocols for their own economic security. And there's no mechanism to reverse that. Until now, the Tally protocol, right? So what the Tally protocol does is basically it allows the token holders to earn the yield that comes from participating in governance and earn the yield that comes from restaking. You can have your liquid staked uni, in this case T-uni, Tally uni. It earns the underlying yield from a portion of the protocol revenue, and the Tally protocol does the work on your behalf of governance. And you can take the liquid version of this token and go earn the yield in EigenLayer. So there's no opportunity cost now for token holders, right? And the important thing that the Tally protocol does, which is very different, is that when you go put your token, liquid stake, first, the liquid stake token has all the same governance rights as the same underlying uni token. So it's strictly equal, right? You hold the uni token, you can vote. You hold T-uni token, you can vote. It's also better than strictly staking uni. Because in staking uni, you put your uni into Unistaker and it's locked. You just earn the rewards from your participation in governance, right? T-uni earns the rewards from participation in governance, and you can now go use it in restaking or DeFi, right? So we've eliminated the opportunity cost. But the important part is when you stick it into DeFi, when you put it on the exchange, and when you put it into restaking, right? When you use it for its economic value alone, the Tally protocol returns the security of the token back to the DAO. Because we've pooled the underlying token, right? So actually all the security of the token, the voting power of the token, is in the protocol, is in the liquid state version of it, right? And when it's not being utilized, we redistribute that, we return it to the DAO. So the protocol is actually maximally aligned with the underlying DAO itself. The more the token price goes up, the more desirable the token is, you have a positive feedback cycle, right? Now, as the token price goes up, more people opt to choose the liquid stake version of the token because the revenue that comes from participating in governance should be going up because the DAO is doing better. Now the token price is going up, so the economic value of the system is going up. So the yield that you should generate from restaking is going up. So more people opt to hold the LSD version as the price goes up. And as the price goes up and more people lock this liquid stake version of the token in third-party services, the more security is actually returned to the DAO that becomes available to the DAO, right? So this actually makes the DAO more secure. And one of the things that the Tally protocol does is by default, it redistributes this voting power to trusted active delegates who are working, who are getting things done. And this system, though, is actually in a dual governance model with the liquid stake token holders, the LST token holders, right? The underlying DAO, Uniswap, gets to control how this voting power is redistributed, right? This voting power is not being sold. It's not a bribe market. It is actually going back to the DAO. So it's making DAOs more secure. It is unlocking economic opportunity for token holders. It is eliminating the opportunity cost. And it is solving the dilemma of this duality nature of DAO tokens, right? You bootstrap your ecosystem with a singular token, but now you split them with the protocol. And you can now let the people who are interested in the speculative holders do whatever they want. The active holders participate. And this is a very important part, right? Because the protocol rewards delegates. It pays delegates. It creates a financial incentive model for doing more work and providing more value, right? This is really important, right? DAOs are struggling with figuring out how do we compensate delegates. Well, we're creating a standard, fair, transparent mechanism for doing so. And we also create a feedback loop of the token holder to performance of their delegate. Today, you pick a delegate. Maybe they do a good job, maybe they do a bad job. How would you ever know? The token price just seems to go up or down based on whatever the market is. There's no connection there, right? But we're actually building a connection because now this LST token earns yield based on performance of the underlying protocol which is represented by the revenue captured by the protocol, which gets returned to this token. So if your yield is going up, something's going right. If your yield is going down, something's going wrong. And you can figure this out in real time. Because you just look at MetaMask and you see, oh, I'm losing money. Yield is going down. Well, sounds like my delegate is doing a shit job because the yield is going down. Why is the yield going down? And now delegates can campaign and say, you know what? Your yield should be going up. Token holders can be like, yeah, it should be going up, right? So we create a real mechanism that rewards delegates who do the day-to-day work. And it also creates a feedback loop so token holders have a reason to hold their delegates accountable, have a mechanism to understand, are they operating in a maximally efficient way, right? They have an incentive to change their delegate if their delegate isn't doing a great job. If you look at Uniswap, so many of the large token holders don't vote, haven't voted for years. There's actually a smart contract in Uniswap that is one of the largest token voters in Uniswap. It's a smart contract. It can't vote. It was designed for a single purpose thing years ago, and the token holders just left their delegations there. Millions of uni. I forget the exact amount, but I think it's at over 1 million uni. It's delegated to this smart contract that does nothing. This is a loss of security of the DAO. That's 1 million votes, or however many votes it is, that are not available to defend Uniswap in the event of an attacker. And the reason why people are still delegating to that smart contract is because they do not care. There's no incentive mechanisms. There's no remuneration for their work. There's no reason why they should even participate. And at best, they sell their tokens, right? And this is what we've learned at Tally over the years that we've been working with DAOs, is the problem for DAOs. We must fix the incentives. We must fix the alignment between the token holders, the delegates, the organization, and the market. Otherwise, this won't work. It simply won't work because you cannot build $1 trillion infrastructure off the back of weekend warriors and forums who are doing it as charity. Doesn't work. You can't combat the opportunity cost incentives of restaking and DeFi without fixing the economic incentives and alignment in the DAO. And this is what the Tally protocol does. The Tally protocol comes full circle in DAOs. It aligns token holders with their delegates. It aligns delegates with success. It aligns DAOs with their ecosystem. And it aligns protocols with the economic reality that they exist in. And that's why we're so excited about it.
All right, Dennison, thank you so much for taking the time to explain the Tally protocol.
Yeah, my pleasure.
It's been a pleasure. As always, check out the show notes for all the links for the announcement, the light paper, how you can get involved if you want to get in touch with us. We'll have all those links in the show notes. Thank you again.
Thank you.
See you next week.